Without further delay, we'll introduce our speaker, Tobin Lehman, who is the founder of New North, an award-winning digital marketing agency dedicated to helping business-to-business technology firms grow. With over 2 decades of working with brands like Southern States, Pfizer, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Kimberly-Clark, and a host of others, Tobin's earned an industry reputation for taking the mystery out of marketing with clear strategies that earn real results. He currently resides in Frederick, Maryland with his spouse and 5 children. Learn more about Tobin and his businesses at ridethetornado.com and newnorth.com. Take it away, Tobin.
Awesome. Thank you for that great intro. Well, thank you guys. I don't know if this is early for some of you or normal for some of you, but thanks for coming out here at 8:30 here this morning. Hopefully this is going to be really worth your time in this. And share my screen. Hopefully that's all coming through here. Get everyone's face here. So as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, my presentation style is a bit different. I like conversations. I don't feel like I want to be a talking head for 50 minutes. I don't think you get as much value that way. So I'm going to go through some content, want some time to talk and chat. I'm going to leave the chat there for questions. You can push them in there. My hope today is that you know, I'm sure you go to a lot of presentations that kind of give you fish, but hopefully today I'm kind of teaching you how to fish. I think there's a lot that goes into email marketing. It's a big topic. I mean, we could spend the hour talking to each individual business here about how to do it right for your business. And my experience in doing this is everyone has a little bit of a different business, different approach to email. So you have to kind of be a little bit broad in this presentation, but hopefully it's broad enough and sharp enough. It gives you guys some good value to kind of think about your email a little bit differently going forward. So that would be my goal in that process. So just real quick agenda for our conversation today, so you can kind of track it home here. We're going to just talk about email campaigns in general. Then we're going to talk about lists and management of lists, and a lot of good questions there. Then we'll talk about automation, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. We get a lot of value here. So pen down your questions if you want to wait to the end. We'll also have some time between each of these sections to ask questions as well. So hopefully it's exciting here as we go on. So let's just, before we even jump into those elements, why email? So I've been a digital marketer for 20 plus years now, and I will tell you, email is still my favorite digital marketing tool. It probably will be until I die. And this is mostly for the reason why. We see the most return, the most engagement, the most consistency from email marketing. There's hundreds of gurus about social media and its impact still has not touched the ROI that you get from email. Email is what I call the workhorse of digital marketing. So every business can use and should be using email. This is a stat from Direct Marketing Association, kind of their ROI calculation here. And I've seen it go higher. I've seen it in certain days there. And the reality is email, and if you kind of wonder how that compares to other, kind of channels in that sense, it still outranks things like SEO, content marketing, paid search. And there's lots of reasons why. We don't get into all the details here, but hopefully this drives some of the fact that if you're not doing email, you should be, and that really if you're not seeing the ROI, there's opportunity there for you to do a little bit more with email marketing and kind of push it forward. I would say there's a reason why you get so much email. It's because it works and there's actually a good return from it. So the key is doing it really well in that process. The most reason why people don't do email well or email as much as they should is they kind of suffer from this. They suffer from the analysis paralysis of how should I be doing email? What should I be doing differently? I see what my competitors are doing. I see this. I see what Amazon's doing, or this shop's doing, or this clothing line's doing, or whatever you want to look at. And we're just kind of confused generally about what we should be doing with email and how to really make it work. So hopefully today, I'm going to kind of clarify a little bit of direction for you. Again, kind of teach you to think differently about email in general, especially as it evolves. I mean, we've seen such a evolution in email marketing over the past years. Things keep changing. There was a big emphasis in graphical email because it was kind of neat. Oh, look, I can make a pretty email. To now, actually less graphics is more commonplace now in email. So the key here is just to think differently about email as you go into it. And hopefully we can open up the coffers for you a little bit mentally as we go forward. So let's talk about email campaigns in general. The first question really with an email campaign is, what will you communicate? And we just talked about all this return you can get from email marketing. So what are you going to communicate? Well, every business is going to have its own answer to that question, but ultimately the reason behind it, or the thing behind it, is all the same. We're going to communicate one thing, and everyone's communicating that same one thing. So there's a little quiz for you. So I know it's early, it's 8:30 in the morning. I'm going to throw some logos up here for you. Anyone just want to put in the chat? I know we're muted here. I'll open my chat window so I can see everybody. What's the one thing that company wants you to remember? Where's my chat window?
That they're the quicker picker upper.
You nailed it. You got it. That's exactly it. All right, here we go. We got two more. They kind of went back to back. What's the one thing these guys want you to remember? Just do it. You got it. Thank you. Yep. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Yep, someone got it. Nice, you're on it. And obviously, Budweiser, they're the king, right? The one thing they're actually working on here is what's called their tagline. You mean is their tagline, but ultimately it's tied to what we would call a unique selling proposition. Ultimately, all of you in business have a unique selling proposition. There's something unique about your business. I propose really that email marketing is just another channel in which you communicate what's unique about your business. That's really what you're doing over time through email marketing, is you're really delivering the value, delivering what's unique about your business through that channel. The same thing, honestly, you do with social media, things you do with your website, but email needs to go into that kind of mental bucket. I think a lot of times in email, we think about, oh, I need to send my product, or I need to send this, or I look at the competition and I start kind of starting in too low in the idea funnel here. But the reality is you want to be communicating your USP, communicating alignment to what's valuable about your company all the time. And really the thing, when you start looking at that USP communication, it frees you up to be a bit more creative with your email campaigns. And so if you think, okay, well, let's say I'm a cleaning company, right? We do cleaning, or we do cleaning supplies, for example. Well, you could do an email full of brooms and brushes and whatnot, but I don't think that's really the unique selling proposition you do. Maybe it's about the selection of products that you offer, or the quality of products that you offer. So really, you can do much more. You can actually do content. You can do written content about your selection process. You could do content around how you test products before you put them on your shelf. The reality is, once you identify what's unique about your business, you say the creative window opens up, and you can think about your unique selling propositions as more of a canvas in which to work and do that. So obviously you need to know your unique selling propositions, and that's like a whole webinar in itself. But typically business have 2 to 3 unique selling propositions. What makes you unique in the market, I like to say, is what are you going to win on? Like when you go up for a bid or a sales opportunity, what are the 2 or 3 reasons why you're different than the competition that help you win the day? If it's your service, or if it's your quality, or if it's your history, it's your expertise, whatever it may be, those 2 things. So as you write those things down, hopefully you have those in your mind already. If not, I think through it, that becomes kind of your North Star for marketing in general, but especially email marketing as you go forward. So once you have that in place, I know we're moving quickly, but it's gonna slow down here in a second. Once you have your one thing, or your USPs, anything you do in terms of the content of that message matters. Even our BBB here, I mean, there's clearly a value proposition to that, but they're doing webinars, they're doing emails, they're doing all these different marketing activities that support that USP or that offering. Same thing exists for your business. So whether you're doing your transactional emails, whether you're putting out news, whether you want to put forth expertise in your emails, whether you want to do personal correspondence, any sales or offers, any product information, any specialized content, whatever you end up putting into your email, whatever format that looks like, if it looks like news or products or whatever it may be, expertise, articles, it all communicates back to that. And when you can create that kind of alignment, then you really can say get creative with email marketing as a whole. So if you've already been doing email marketing, which I assume most of you have to some degree, hopefully this changes a little bit of your perspective to kind of think a little bit higher, saying, what is unique about my company? If you're just pushing out product or just pushing out news, and it's not as related to your unique proposition, it's time to think and kind of go through that and be a little bit more creative about that. As I kind of go through here, again, there's so much to talk about email marketing. I'm gonna kind of just tack a few little items in here as well. A lot of times when we're thinking about our users and our audience, which has to do with our unique proposition, sometimes we don't think about the reality that we're now a fully desktop and email marketing scenario here. So desktop and mobile. And so I always think about mobile audience as well in that process. It's definitely something to think through. Most of your services, your MailChimps and all that stuff will provide responsive templates for you, but just wanted to sneak that in here, something for you to think about. And so as you're going into think about your USPs, you think about the types of content you want to do, the kind of element there inside what your content is, different types of elements to go into that. So let's say, again, you're use my cleaning company here, you're going to do some expertise and you're going to sell some products. That's great. You create an email, you started building that email, you're doing some marketing in that sense. Testing becomes really an element inside of campaigns themselves. And so as we look at testing and really what goes into an email campaign, so we have like the framework for thinking about the email. All of these things matter when you think about your email itself, the actual physical email, your subject line, how that really plays into it, the messaging itself, what you put in it, any kind of calls to action for your email, obviously the design, look and feel, personalization, where it goes, what part of website it goes to, obviously your audience, and even the sending name. This is a quick little survey of how much these things are tested in general. We do a lot of email testing, a lot of variation testing, and that's kind of, I don't know where all of you are. Some people are like, whoa, testing, I'm not even at creation yet. And I get it, but for those who are already there, hopefully this provides a little bit of push for you to get a bit more aggressive in your email thinking and testing here. But all of these elements matter. We've seen email campaigns, once we've aligned them to where we're going message-wise, we start testing things like subject lines. You can do A/B testing, what they call A/B testing or multivariate testing in most email software, trying a different subject line to half your audience, this subject line versus this subject line, which one matters the most, looking at different placements of buttons and designs and those things. So as you're kind of going through that messaging to think more about, okay, where's my content? Who am I focusing on? What am I trying to communicate? How am I structuring that? How am I kind of building that and testing that and building those elements out? All of these things go into making, I believe, a strong email campaign. So a couple quick, I call them the rapid fire QA questions. I could go into very, very lengthy detail here. I'm going to pause after this slide to kind of get some questions from you guys. I know I just put a bunch on you here in the early part of the conversation, but I get these questions a lot. So I'm just going to go through a lot of the answers here. Is there such thing as too much email? My answer is no. There's a reason why Amazon sends you many, many emails a day, because it works. I think the real answer to that is based on your metrics and your understanding. I think most people actually send too little email. That's probably hard to believe, but I think many of you have an opportunity to actually send more email, and you're probably just tentative. You may have your own feelings like, oh, I don't like spam. I don't want to spam. Like, but again, if you're aligning it to value and you're thinking about the customer correctly and you're doing those things, honestly, who doesn't want to be helped more in their day, right? Who doesn't want to be provided for more in that context? So again, it's more of a mind shift, and I think you could do probably more. Most of our clients are somewhere between, well, depending on automated versus that, but most newsletters are twice a month for a lot of our clients, and we see some weekly emails going out as well. Should you use video and email? Absolutely. You can't actually put a video in an email yet. That's coming, I imagine, but you can use stills and GIFs, and video content is a fantastic piece of content. You can still use images in email for sure. It's a great thing. As I mentioned, the design does matter for your email. I think nowadays we're seeing more content around cleaner emails or plain emails or simpler emails. I'm sure you're getting some simple emails here. So I don't think it's quite a bar as it used to be. People ask a lot to who about what's the best time to send email. So you can Google that. There's lots of stats around it. I think the best thing for you to do is to test and look at your sending times and see what makes sense for you. But ultimately, there's tons of research on this. You can go pick a time from some of that research and get out there. And then again, same thing. Can you send a 3-line email? You can. Some of our most successful emails are actually automated emails with 2 or 3 lines in them. And it's just a simple ask, a very direct call to action. So I think just to put that question in there to kind of help you think about it, you don't need to kill people with information in email. We get so much email. I mean, who opens an email and sees a long email and like sits down and grabs a cup of coffee and reads that? They don't. So the reality is, if you know your audience, you understand what they're thinking, what you want to communicate, simple emails. Here's our newsletter. It's a paragraph. Thanks. Click here for more information. Might do your audience a favor. So just some thoughts there. So let me kind of break here to our little first kind of Q&A section. There's 2 questions for you to think about, kind of take away from here. You know, what value can you provide through the email channel for your customer? What's that one thing you want to communicate that's unique about your business? What's your uniqueness about your business or USPs? What makes sense in terms of what communication? Can you send news? Can you send product information? What are the different things you can communicate in that? And how does that provide value? And then really another way of saying that question is, what do your customers want from you? And how can you deliver that through something like email or even other media chances? So quick pause, you can think about that. And meantime, anyone want to put up questions, I can answer some right now before we get into lists specifically.
No questions at this time on my side.
Great. Wonderful. Good. We'll definitely think about these 3 questions, or these 2 questions here as we kind of go forward. Oh, there you go. Landing page and email.
Sure.
Great thing. So emails, as we talk about call to actions and emails, landing pages, every email should have a call to action. What we mean by that is that it has some action for a user to take. You're calling them to do something, right? A lot of time that's clicking into your website, and that's what absolutely should be there. If you don't have that, it's hard to tell the success of an email. We have some emails that don't have direct call to actions, and so we look at open rate to see how successful it was. But if you have a link, if somewhere you want them to go, that click or that call to action can change in that process. So you can look at sending an email to different pages of your site and see kind of how long it works. Like if you said, learn more about our company, and you link to the about page versus linking to the home page, see which of those kind of visitor paths ended up doing better for you, who spent more time on the site, who kind of went through and looked at some of those things. So that's what I mean by landing pages, is that really every email campaign generally links to some aspect of your website because you want to draw traffic in from there. Oh, I'm getting to that one. That's going to be a good question. What's a good source to find customers to send emails to? We're going to get to lists here in 1 second. That's a great question. Any other questions about email campaigns as a whole? Good. Awesome. Let me kind of keep trekking here. So let's talk about lists and management. So with email, obviously we understand the email campaign itself, this beautiful little nugget we create in our email system, and we go to the next, and it says pick your list. The list is really one of the core attributes of an email campaign. And so when you're thinking about the list, a lot of times people have a list. You have one list, and that's okay. It's sometimes it's just a matter of kind of how you phrase it. But the goal for list and list management is to really create lists, multiple lists. Sometimes that is called segmentation. You might use that term, segmentation, breaking your lists into segments or pieces to increase the relevancy of your communication by grouping your contacts. That's what segmentation does. The beauty of that is if you have a group, like let's use our BBB here, or we can use even your business, you may have different attributes of your customer list, the big list, that you can break up to increase the relevancy of an email. So yeah, good. I see the chat going. This is awesome. So you break up, you may have a customer list, you may have a prospect list. This is a very simple way of thinking about segmentation. Obviously, people that are already customers may get a different message. You may be able to increase relevancy of your email to that list versus people who are prospects need a different message. The beauty is, the more complex you get into email marketing, the more you do in email marketing, you have a way of breaking this up so you can become more relevant to that market. What's really the big takeaway from this? Well, obviously, the more relevant something is, the more applicable it's going to be for your audience. So you see a massive increase in open rates. You can see more leads, more deliverability, more transactions. Ultimately, your email just becomes more receptive because you're able to be more specific with your one thing, your message, so to speak, to that audience in the right way they're trying to do it. We have, for example, in New North, we have a newsletter we send out. It's a very short piece of content. Hope we can all go to our website, sign up for it. It gets a very short piece of content, take away, and you're done. If you sign up for an ebook or something like that, you get a different piece of content, a different piece of element. So it actually ends up being more relevant to you based on what you've signed up for. Great way of doing it. That's the whole intent. As we start to be earning space and earning that conversation, it very much becomes the way we communicate value to a customer by being more relevant to them. I mean, we all get so much email, we start unsubscribing to the ones that we feel like are irrelevant to us or not timely to us in that sense. Always a good thing. So where do you kind of start with this? Most businesses, I think, could get by with just a few segments, but really comes down to a couple simple attributes. Generally, it's industry, one of the first ones we look at. So if you serve multiple industries, like you serve, butchers, bakers, and candle makers, like if you serve different industries, you can just break up your list that way. The ultimate reality there is a lot of that's generally manual work, unless you're using a CRM, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But breaking it by industry allows you to get more focused on what your one thing means to that industry, right? So if your expertise is something different for that industry versus this industry, you can communicate that through your email. Product types is another way of doing that. If you have different product interests, like if you're a service provider and you maybe if you're a lawyer, you may have real estate law, you may also have family law, you may also have civics or commercial law, different products or different offerings, different segmentation for that list. You can be more specific in that sense. Lifecycle stage, that's a very typical one, like I mentioned before, prospects, customers, old customers. One of the things we see in that sense is a lot of times people have email lists and it's just a big commingling bunch of people. You've got family, you got friends, you got people that your competitors are in there. It's the one big pool. And so you send a message, you're like, hey, I got pretty good open rates. Well, it's your mom and your friend and your competitors. It's not your actual customers, right? So breaking that up by life cycle stage, at least breaking off the type of person it is in that sense, helps you understand who's really opening your emails. Geography, another big one. If you serve a broader base, you can serve by geography. Product history, if you're e-commerce, that's a great piece of information to use. So if you have a customer that bought a certain product in the past, and you're about to do a campaign on an updated product, that's a great segmentation there. Obviously, any kind of user attributes, age, gender, et cetera, you can break up your list that way. And then appended data, which we're going to get to a little bit in automation, but really any kind of other information that may be relevant to your prospects. So thinking about things like, do they have a bid, or what's the company's industry or news related to that industry or that company. So those are your basic ones. If any of you started here, I think you'd see that increased open rates and kind of context from there. There's obviously a ton of things you can do this. Here's even more, kind of details in terms of what you can do. And obviously people take this to the nth degree. I mean, you can really get very specific on geographics, demographics, psychographics, behavioral, all of these things. You can segment to your, blue in the face. It doesn't really matter what you do. But I think for most businesses, I think there's probably a kind of threshold. And honestly, the threshold is going to match what you can actually do. I wouldn't suggest anyone go through and make 50 different lists if they only have the bandwidth each month to create 3 emails. It's not going to matter. You're not going to be able to send the email to each segment. So just segment to the sense of what you can actually produce email wise. That way you're kind of staying with your new ideas and your new prospects. But again, whatever you can really think of this day and age, you can actually segment your lists by. Why? Because we talked about accuracy matters, right? We've seen a lot of stories of emails being targeted in certain ways and actually segmenting lists and learning things about customers and being able to test. Ultimately you may get to where you want to go, but you may go all over the place trying to get there with your email marketing. I think segmentation is probably the number one thing I would say. If you walk away from this conversation, what you should work on is really segmentation. I think you'll learn things, you'll learn how to really engage, you'll learn how popular your messages are, so you can look at testing and building up those things. It doesn't just really does matter. Ultimately, when you start talking about segmentation and lists, the CRM conversation comes up. A decade ago plus, email systems were pretty siloed, if you will. They were kind of off in their own world. to CRMs, and CRMs are customer relationship management software. It's your Salesforce, your Zohos, all these CRM systems. And not every business had one. And still today, not every business has a CRM, but I highly recommend getting a CRM if you don't have one. And most CRMs actually connect to email systems. And actually some email systems offer a free CRM, like HubSpot, for example, offers a free CRM with their email system. The reality is CRM, your customer relationship management software, has become kind of the repository of most of your lists. You can do a lot of cool segmentation there. You can get an email list of who hasn't paid you, which is always a good email list to be able to get if your CRM is connected to your accounting process. So there's really a benefit here in terms of how you can tie your data together in a bigger picture from a CRM perspective, to be able to say, okay, here's my whole customer list, here's my whole universe, here's my whole world of my business and all the contacts related to it. And then you can use that to send emails. The added benefit of that too is that one of the hard things is keeping up with your email. And like someone mentioned about getting more customers in your email list. If you have someone, a customer contact change, maybe a new person arrives at a customer. A lot of times there's a lot of these, what I'd call them like side doors to your business that don't always come through your marketing. So how do you capture them? Usually a CRM is the big reason for doing that. So I ultimately would say seek a CRM if you don't have one of those. So here's getting to the rapid fire questions here on lists. Should I buy an email list? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. That's a bit of a controversial topic, so I'm gonna explain that here for a second. Buying email lists is completely legitimate, but you gotta be very careful with it, okay? So we have a CAN Spam Act, you can look it up, it's called CAN Spam, just like it sounds, CAN Spam. That's really the governing kind of protocol over the internet and spamming emails. Basically, the law stipulates what we call a one-time email. So we can send you a one-time email to use that. And after that, you have to be careful. So I recommend being really versed at this or using a partner to help you do this kind of list. But you can buy a list, you can send it through a cold email provider. Now, you can also acquire lists legitimately, things like associations, things like that. But a lot of associations and groups will keep their list very private, which is good. It's part of their privacy. But there's services out there like ZoomInfo or Reply.io that you can actually buy lists from, or even just Google list buying, you'll find tons of companies. I will give you a couple caveats though. Buying lists typically have a lower open rate. The quality of the list is the biggest concern. I would say if you buy a list of 1,000 people, your list is going to have maybe 20% to 40% will be actually good contacts. So just go into it knowing that based on your costs, right? So if you buy 2,000 people in the Baltimore area, probably 900 to 700 of them will be like actually good. Like they may open the email and go from that. But it's a very fast way to build your email list. Second, you have to use a special system to send that email. You cannot send it through MailChimp. You cannot send it through HubSpot. You can't send it through Campaign Monitor. All of those systems, rightfully so, prevent you from uploading purchased lists. And that's simply because of CAN Spam precautions. They don't want people doing that. There are systems though, like Mailshake is one of them. If you Google cold email, that's what it's called. It's kind of like the sales cold call. It's like a cold email. There's many systems out there that can do cold email for you. And there's some regulations and things that actually help you monitor that process. But I'm big fan of buying email lists. I think it's one of the fastest ways to grow your email list, and the data is readily available. And soon it'll be less available based on, I think, some of the laws coming through in kind of the cookie world and data. So I definitely recommend it. Should I care if someone unsubscribes? No. And the reason is because, well, you should care if you get a massive unsubscribe. Maybe you said something that you shouldn't have said, but reality, an unsubscribe is someone saying, you're not relevant to me anymore. Sometimes you can't change that. So let it go. My general thought is let it go. Now, if you see a massive surge, obviously there's something you should probably take a look at, but typically we see a general attrition rate, a general loss rate for emails over time. It's okay. How much email is too much email? Again, I say, I don't think you get that issue. I think if you start seeing unsubscribes, maybe you get some of that. A lot of email tools will have a little feedback mechanism for you. I don't think that's, how should I update my email list and how can I grow my email list? Updating is one thing. You can use services for that to actually take your list, say, hey, this is a list, it's old, you can upload it to an appending service, and it will actually give you refreshed data, new addresses, new names, new contact information, things like that. And then how can I grow my email list? Well, we talk about buying lists. That's a big part of this. But growing lists gets into a whole aspect. I'm sure you're covering some of that in some of these webinars around how you kind of manage your website and marketing. For example, a lot of our clients will have ebooks, white papers. It's a very common way of building up your email list. The goal basically is you want to transfer your users on your website to being email addresses. And you typically do that through pop-up windows, through ebooks, through things like that on your website. Allow people to exchange their email for information. And that's really the best way to organically grow your email list. A lot of our clients will convert, I'll say 2 to 5% of their website visitors. So if they get 1,000 visitors, they're getting then 20 to 50 email addresses, new ones each month. And so that's probably the best way, because people are also opting in, meaning they want that content. So it's a great way to grow that list. And as I mentioned, how many segments list do I need? Really depends on how much email you can create. If you can only create 1 or 2 emails a month, then go with just a couple segments that you can serve. But you don't need to over segment your emails if you're not going to be able to send emails to them. So there's kind of a quick deep dive here. 2 questions, and we'll take some questions from you guys. Can you better segment your list? Think about that. Can you create a segment that'd be meaningful to your business to help you kind of build value, whether it's customers, previous customers, prospects, and really, what is our email list growth strategy? Are we going to buy? Are we going to organically grow? I think the email is what I would call like the heartbeat of a business. If you don't have an email list, it's one of the first questions we ask new clients first. How big is your email list? Because ultimately that is going to predicate sales in the big picture. So having a good growth strategy is part of that. So we can pause here. Anyone have any questions on list strategy, list management? Fully satiated, looks like everyone's got all their answers. Oh, there we go. Yeah, great question. Someone asked about converting social media contacts to an email list. It's a great question. That's a great process. For social media, and a lot of the work that we do, it's different based on industry. So bear with me. We're B2B marketers. B2C is a little bit easier, I think, in some of this, but typically for social media, as we mentioned in email, you'll have a call to action. There's a lot of different kind of ways of thinking about that, but typically we follow kind of a give, ask kind of method where we say we give information, we provide value, and then we ask something of our users. Typically that ask is visit our website, or that ask is download a white paper. And that's one way we harvest contacts from social media, is we kind of lure them into one of our forms, if you will. I know a lot of platforms now are doing email conversion right there on the platform. And LinkedIn just launched one. I'm sure Facebook has something similar. So really you're driving them to a form of some sort. So any way you can do that through social media, whether you push them to a video or you push them to something else, every little system now has a way of converting like an anonymous user to a video or to an email. There's even a video, I think it's Vidyard, or I don't think Venmo has it yet, or sorry, I forget the V video one now. But let them have like where you can watch the first 5 minutes of video and then all of a sudden it stops and you have to enter your email address. Another great way of doing video collection that way. But that collection of emails is pretty popular in terms of content. And so you can do that through social, you can do that through video even. That'd be the way of kind of connecting the dots there. Drive them towards something that's going to force them to put in their email address. And that in itself is controversial. You'll find people who don't believe in that. For my space, I think it's really critical because we're basically giving away a lot of good information, and that value is high. So I kind of prescribe to a value equating model. If our value is high, you're willing to give good value of your email address to get that value. And so that's part of that process. Good. All right, wonderful. Hopefully you got the brain kind of working here a little bit on some of those lists. We covered email campaigns as a whole. We talked about lists and list strategy. Now we're going to put it all together into email marketing automation. Now I could say there's a show of hands, but I can't see any hands. But usually probably when I do this conversation, most of you're here, maybe you're kind of interested in automation, you're not all the way into automation yet. So I'm going to assume most of you are kind of getting into automation. Maybe you thought about it, maybe you have a tool that allows it, but you haven't really tapped into it. And so I'm going to kind of give you the good process here. Email automation is really taking lists, taking our strategy and marrying them in a sense where we can make email smarter by aligning the content and context to the user. That's really the core of email automation. It's basically taking you, the person, out of the equation in terms of managing email. So the reality is you can send things faster, you can save time, you can do all these elements here. That's really the power of automation. Now, there's email automation, there's marketing automation. You'll hear both terms. Obviously, email is a subset of marketing automation. A lot of systems will do marketing automation, which allows you to do multiple things. Like if someone goes through a form on your website, you can automatically send a friend request to Facebook. There's a lot of automated tasks you can do. I think the future of business is actually automation. In a lot of cases, we'll see it in marketing and ops and all kinds of spaces. When we're talking about email marketing specifically, it's all about really aligning our email messaging and our marketing to the user in that sense. So what does that mean? So kind of another way of thinking about it, let's talk about the kind of the old way, maybe the current way for a lot of you, and it's okay. We still do some email like this. It's not for everything, but the old way is basically create content, schedule, send. That's a manual click button kind of process. The new way, the automated way, is create content, align to a trigger, automate. So we don't actually even hit send on these emails. They're basically attached to what's called a trigger, a simple trigger content. So a trigger may be something like user completes a form, right? So say you have a contact us form on your website. When someone fills out that form, that becomes a trigger. Your email automation system understands that. It sends them a thank you message. That's pretty simple automation. It could also send a follow-up email 2 days later. It could also send an email to you. It could send an email to a salesperson. It could send them an email reply in 3 days. The reality is once you set up as a trigger, none of those emails are actually manually engaged. They're automated. And that's really the big contents. Typically your newsletters aren't generally automated. This goes into other aspects of communication and using email well. So what are triggers? And this is really, again, as you start thinking through this, the speed in which you implement this kind of stuff, I think needs to be slow and kind of more thoughtful. But there's some triggers to consider right from the beginning. And again, all this is going to be predicated on the fact that you have an email system, automation system, and where it connects to, right? If you have an email system that's automated and connected to your CRM, that'll be different than what you can do to one that's just connected to your email, for example. So a big one is website views. We have some email systems and we have some we set up for our clients where if someone in our database, we send them an email, a newsletter, for example, they go to the website, they're checking around, and maybe they go to a product page. Well, we can actually record that data now and actually send them right at that moment an email following up about that product. Pretty simple automation, pretty powerful, right? It's basically aligning again to the user's actions. So website page views are a big one of those. Form submissions, orders, obviously that's another big piece. If you're doing ebooks, you're doing some kind of form conversion on your website, maybe it's an application or whatever it may be, you're setting up a sequence of emails that can go out after that. For example, when someone fills out a form on our site, or even like a demo, we do a lot of software. So someone does a demo of a software, there's actually a 5 to 7 email message sequence that goes out after they download that, checking in on how they like the software. Can they leave a review? Do they want to go for a demo? All of these messages are actually automated then in the process to allow them to kind of follow up in that process. So when you have something asynchronous as 40 or 50 demos being downloaded every day, you don't have to go in and hit send to each person going through that. You automate it and actually makes it a lot easier. Obviously, any customer data, you could set up a reminder in systems that do this, but if you have everyone's birthday in your CRM, you could send an automated birthday email, personalized with data right in there. Time duration, another good one. Maybe you haven't talked to somebody, you want to keep up with everybody in your CRM or your customers every 30 days. Every 30 days, it could send a little bump email to you, even to help you remember, or even send the email out to your customers. Again, it's all about using the data you have in the system to then automate something more powerful. Any other email action, like someone clicks an email, but also any offline stuff too. Sometimes you integrate If your CRM is in there, if there's a meeting that's scheduled or a deal that's signed or anything that happens in the CRM, you can use that data point to then automate, an email sequence in that sense. So what are the big benefits? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work, sounds pretty interesting. What am I going to really gain from it? The biggest gain from automation is really saving time. You do get some aspects of increasing your lead generation, again, based on what you try to do here. You will see this process here, but ultimately, this is from Get Response, their kind of data from doing surveys. I think ultimately it's about saving time, and ultimately it's about being smarter. It's about being more timely. As we've seen in the very beginning of this presentation, relevancy is what matters to a customer when it comes to email. How relevant is this to me? The best way to make something relevant is to make it timely. And as we've probably all learned as business owners, the best thing we can do is get things off of our plate to help our customers and not kind of manage it manually. So really the time savings increases the relevancy through automation as well. And so you get things that are sent timely, right at the right time for that customer when they're looking at something and they're kind of out of the way. And that's a really great thing to think about. So the balance for you really then is thinking about how much email do you send? Can you make sure it's automated? Can you build up automation systems in that place to really increase that, saving you time, saving you energy, being able to do something more relevant for your customers. So this is a simple example. This is just a screenshot because I think you may be thinking, oh, this is cool. What does this look like? Let me kind of see what this looks like. This is a sample automation of what you might see in an automation platform. Everybody has their own interface, what this looks like, but new subscriber joins a list. You can add a tag in the CRM, or they came from this list. Okay, we're going to send a welcome email. Then we can wait for 2 days. Then we can send our best email articles, right? And we can go on and go on from there. Pretty simple idea of a sequence here. This is like a welcome sequence. Typically, you can set up a welcome sequence. You can do multiple sequences this way. But again, it's all about kind of figuring out, again, at the big picture, what do you want to communicate? How's it going to be valuable? And aligning it so you can do these things and really follow up well in automation. So we're rapid fire here as we get towards the question part. Does every business need email automation? I would say yes. I think you can use it every business. Really, the second thing is about factoring cost. If you're a solopreneur, you may benefit from it. But if you're like 2 or 3 people, maybe you got someone who's doing email, maybe it doesn't benefit and your systems may be simple. I think you need to look at time savings is the first thing I would look at. I look at time savings and also look at total software costs. Something that can really help you if you're paying a assistant or something like that, that you've got a whole process set up to kind of manage. Using automation can be helpful, right? The HubSpot brings all these pieces together. MailChimp's starting to bring all the pieces together, social media, things like that. So automation can really help you slim your systems down. Should I consider more of the automation? Yes, if you got the budget to do so. You've got things like MailChimp's getting out there, HubSpot, controlled social media, paid ads, all kinds of things under one automation platform. I think it's advantageous. Again, all depends on your budget. I mean, some of the software can go $500-$800 a month, pretty expensive. So you have to kind of balance what your time saving is and you're going there. And then who benefits from automation? Your customer. Your customer benefits the most because you're able to then move information to them in a timely fashion. Ultimately, as you help them, we also understand we help our customers and they pay us back in that sense for helping them. So the more we can help them, the better we can make that process go, the better it'll be for us as business owners as well. So I get asked this question a lot, like what are the best platforms? You can screenshot this if you want, kind of look at these later. There's just so many. There's so many. The one that's not on here, I'll make a note and is like Constant Contact. I mean, for many years they were on my do not go list. I think they're getting a little bit better these days. But I think you can really find a lot of good stuff. And what we're seeing more and more, just like CRMs, there's different email clients being built for different industries. For example, Keep is an automation platform. It's built for a lot of solopreneurs, built for a lot of consultants. And so you've got kind of a CRM for consultants built in with an email system. So look for, systems that cater to your space specifically. You'll probably find a couple that do really well with that. So there we go. We did it. We got through the whole presentation here. So let me give you kind of some next steps here, and then we can kind of go into some Q&A. So take anything away from here's my 4 asks of you from this presentation. Review your content strategy. Is there something you can do differently with your content in your emails that gets your user closer to your USP, to your niche, like why you exist, your one thing? It may be that you've been doing something for so long, you kind of forgot why you're even doing that kind of message. You just get the next email out. I got a monthly email. I got to get it out. But really take a step back and reinvent that. Try to go something shorter. Try to go something longer. Try to change the format. Go to video. Video by far is the best open rate and best click-through rate of any email we do in this day and age. So think differently about that. Create a segment to increase your relevancy. In any software system, you can create a segment very easily. Look at what attributes you do have. If it's connected to a CRM, you can do that pretty easily. And again, integrate with your CRM if you do have one. You'll find that to be one of the best connections you've made for your life, just in having your lists sync up. So you get a new customer, it goes right into your email list. There's just so much benefit from that. And then look into automation if you feel like you're wanting to go into that direction and really be kind of pushed and kind of do something a little bit smarter with email. So I think that would be a really good thing to go. So let me pause here for questions before I kind of wrap up here. So I saw there was one from Janet. She says, if you're someone starting from scratch, what are the benefits of what they need to benefit from email messaging? Well, Janet, I'm not sure if you saw the intro part of this presentation, but really talking a lot about what are the benefits, what's the value you're trying to communicate to your customer. So what is it you want to communicate? Typically that is your one thing, your kind of your USP, as we say, your unique selling proposition. What is the one thing about your company you want your customer to know? And honestly, you got to tell them multiple times, kind of like a child. If you're parents, you got to tell them multiple times before it really sticks in their head. And so email messaging is a great way to do that over and over again. And you do that through the vehicle of using something like content. So whether it be product information or content information, an article, whatever it may be, but you're communicating what your one thing is over time with email. And that gives you a creative space to say, I can send anything I want to my customer as long as it reinforces the one thing about my business. If you're a stylist, for example, you could send someone else's video. It doesn't have to be your own content, but if it falls under your umbrella of being, a stylist or a fashion maven, whatever it may be, that video supports that messaging and they'll associate you with that cutting edge idea in fashion. And so again, your email is a delivery method to be able to push information to your customer in a very relevant way. If you're keeping it relevant under your one thing, you can really have a creative canvas to send some good email. Any other questions? Oh, great. So which tools? So I think, going back to this here, where was it? I think you can pick up any one of these tools. So Janet just followed up here with this, what tools I should recommend. Probably the go-to is MailChimp if you're just starting out with email. They have a free service, I think, for under 2,000 people in your mailing list. And so I would start with MailChimp. It's where to go to. They'll guide you through a lot of processes. They have a lot of good templates there. And so you can get started really easily with them. Just follow their setup wizard, all that kind of stuff. You'll get set up pretty quickly. All of these systems, and you'll be able to then go in the longer term to something bigger, or even just use that and end up going to a paid tier as you kind of build it out and get more success from it. But they've got a lot of good resources and they cater well to people who are starting up in the email process. So yeah, go check them out. You'll find tons of value there. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? Well, hopefully you guys got a lot of information here this morning and you got some kind of challenges here, kind of some to-dos, not just information for you to kind of sit through, but to think, okay, now I've got something I can do and kind of prime the pump for innovating your email a bit here. I wrote a book just to give you a little thing here, Ride the Tornado. You can check it out. It's all about an agile approach to marketing. You can find it on Amazon. You can check out ridethetornado.com. And obviously you can find me on Instagram or Twitter, and also find on LinkedIn for New North, the agency here, if you wanted to follow our information. You can go to our website and download one of our guides, and you'll end up in our email flow as well. We have lots of ebooks and resources on our website too. So thank you guys for your time here today.